So the rescission bill, as we said, it goes to the USAID. So we're talking about malaria nets in the developing world. We're talking about Ebola prevention. Elon joked about they accidentally cut Ebola prevention funding. It goes to investing in infrastructure all around the globe. You may be saying to yourself, well, I don't care about what goes on around the globe. What about what happens to me? There's this concept in international diplomacy called soft power. And what soft power is winning over the hearts and minds of people so that you don't have to bomb them later. So if you invest in the front end on people liking you, you don't have to spend $1 trillion on the back end to blow those same people up later when they don't like you. Over the course of the last decade, China has spent upwards of $10 trillion on what's called the Belt and Road Initiative. Belt and Road, as we talked about before, is where they are going into these developing nations and these quote-unquote third world countries, as Trump calls them, S-hole countries, and they will build the international airport there. They will build the parliament building. They will build the sewer system. They will build the roads and bridges. It's called the Belt and Roads Initiative. It is a new Silk Road that funnels everything directly to Beijing. So the minerals that are mined in the Congo can be taken directly from there by a Chinese company with Chinese workers, and they can be put on a boat in a port built by a Chinese company and taken on a Chinese boat directly back to Beijing to build the next generation of electric cars and semiconductors. That's what the Belt and Road Initiative is. Now, America, what we would do is go in with the CIA and have regime change, overthrow the government, have a coup, bomb the hell out of the people for 20 years, and then steal all the resources. So that's what I mean by soft power. It's kind of like when you meet somebody out and they may be an unsavory person. One person might come up to you and talk to you and get to know you and talk real smooth to you and then pick your pocket. Other person might knock you across the head and just take it. The American technique is just to knock you across the head. China, at least, wants to romance you and buy you a couple drinks first before they rob you blind. So China and Beijing have been centralizing power through this Belt and Road Initiative. This is what led to the development of the BRICS alliance, which is not a direct competitor to the U.S., but an alternative to the U.S., saying that if you don't want to be subject to Donald Trump saying, I'm going to put a 50% tariff on you if you decide to prosecute your former corrupt president because he came to my golf course, well, then now you don't have to be subject to that. And nations like Brazil and China and South Africa and Russia and Iran can get together and have their own economic alliances. You can create a BRICS currency that is able to compete with the U.S. dollar to be the international reserve currency, so that all of a sudden that $40 trillion that America owes comes due because people can actually come and collect on it. This is why you need soft power. So cutting $9.4 billion from USAID, from AIDS programs, and from educational programs at NPR, we're going to pay that back in the trillions in the decades to come in military interventions and bombing of people. All of these things are interconnected and have a place within the American political strata. And that's why it's important that this bill not pass. So it's already passed the House of Representatives. It's in the Senate right now. They have a majority in the Senate, but because this is a bill where they have to get a 60-vote majority, because it is subject to the filibuster, what we're going to see is a fight going down to the end of the week. They have until Friday for the Senate to pass this, and they do not have enough votes to pass it right now. And there are many Republicans, and by many I mean like 3, that have serious concerns. And frankly, if you're somebody like a Tom Tillis, who Donald Trump just publicly browbeat in order to get your vote on the quote-unquote big, beautiful bill that you didn't want to vote for, if you're a Josh Hawley that was just publicly excoriated by the president in order to get your vote for the big, beautiful bill, if you're Lisa Murkowski, who just sold out the rest of the country to get exemptions for Alaska for some of these draconian cuts to rural hospitals and rural grocery stores, etc., they might be in a position where they decide that they're not going to vote for this. But it's going to be up to us, the voters, the American people, to make it clear to them that we say we're not going to take a step back now, that we're not going to sacrifice U.S. aid to countries around the world and doom our grandchildren to fighting a war that's being the roots of which are being planted today. Those kids who died on Normandy Beach during World War II were dying for wars that started 50 years before they were born. Old men send young men to die for money that they will never have. We are a militaristic nation that has spent the last 20 plus years. Since I was in high school, America has been at war with somebody all the time. I remember growing up and sitting down with my sister to watch Urkel on TGIF, and instead it was live footage of us invading Iraq during Operation Desert Storm during the first Gulf War. I remember being in high school when the planes hit the towers. I was in Miss Ward's English class. We had to roll the TV in. Remember the TV used to be on the stand? We had to roll it in, and we saw the second plane hit. I remember there were military recruiters on campus in high school before the end of the day. I went to high school in Kendrick in Columbus, so there was Fort Benning right there. The Marines, the Army, the Air Force, they were all there before we got to lunch on the day of 9/11. I remember friends and relatives, my sister, being sent off to guard convoys from Kuwait to Baghdad. They were listening to bombs over Baghdad while in Baghdad with bombs going off. For wars that started decades before they were even born. And when you say we're going to cut aid, we're going to cut assistance, we're not going to give people what they need to actually believe in America. We're going to, I think the estimates are that upwards of 10 million people may die internationally if America cuts off USAID, if they cut off food assistance to starving nations that are starving because we starve them. I want you to remember that. These people aren't just like randomly starving. They're not just in the part of the world where starvation happens. They're starving because of us. That's what America does. And now we're saying we're going to cut off the food assistance to the countries that we are starving. We're going to cut off the medical assistance. We're going to cut off AIDS programs. We're going to cut off Ebola programs. What the hell you think those kids going to do when they grow up in 30 years or so? You think the little kid who had to watch their parents die from some disease because the USAID closed down, you think they're going to grow up to be a cab driver? You think the child who has to know that they are starving right now because Donald Trump decided he wanted to cut the budget, you think they're going to grow up in 20 years and say, like, man, I'm going to go to America and start a business? The roots of our future destruction are being sown today. So we need to get on those phones and call our senators. We need to make sure that these people understand that we are not going to take these cuts. And we have to cut out this idea that America is somehow an island or a space station. You either want to be in charge or you don't. You can say, I want all the good parts of being in charge of the world, but none of the bad parts of being in charge of the world. I want all the money to flow into our country, but I don't want anything to flow out to help the people that we're stealing from. We are at a crossroad, and we may indeed be on the other side of the Rubicon already. And we have to make the decisions necessary to bring ourselves back, or we will continue to see what we're seeing internationally. Because every part of the world is currently at a tipping point, it seems. And the bombs are blowing up at a rate that we haven't seen in a long time. And if you look at history, you will notice that normally, when there's a whole lot of little wars going on at the same time, suddenly they kind of combine together to turn into one big war. So if you're talking about Russia, Ukraine, Israel versus Iran, Pakistan versus India, China versus Taiwan, North Korea versus South Korea, all those things start metastasizing together. Agreements start getting made. Teams start getting chosen. And all those little conflicts turn into a big conflict very quickly. We're going to talk more about this after the break. Call in News and Talk 1380 WAOK. We'll be back after the break.